She had her mother killed in her sleep. When and where do we draw the line in society? What about Laken Riley's humanity? I mean, he's ridiculous. He should resign, or if he won't resign, be forcefully removed from that office. And instead, what does she do? She goes and throws him away like trash, dumping him over a fence into sticker bushes on the side of a highway. How disgusting do you have to be?
I'm going to tell you in detail why you have been kidnapped, what's going to happen to you, and how long you'll be here.
The fact that she would have some sort of justification, some sort of reasoning, as if money would ever be a reason to do this to your family, is just bone chilling. Why would you cover for this man and allow him to leave the scene of the crime and act like he was never there? Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Kelly, and we are back with another video. If you guys are new to the channel and you enjoy true crime stories, news, politics, and so much more, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, guys. I really would appreciate it. And if you're a returning listener, subscriber, well, thank you guys, as always, for being a friend. I really appreciate y'all, and please like the video if you like it. Give me a comment, whatever you can do. It really does help me out, and it's a free way to do so. And I thank everyone in advance for watching this video.
You know the thing.
So let's get right into it.
This emergency. Got a call for 4 people dead. Possibly 4 victims have been shot.
Says some people are just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
In the quiet suburban enclave of Clear Lake, Texas, a series of brutal murders shattered the illusion of safety. Known for its tranquil neighborhoods and close-knit community, it was the last place anyone expected to be the setting for such a horrific series of crimes. But in the early 2000s, this picturesque suburb became the backdrop for a tragedy that would haunt residents for years to come. Most of us can look back on our high school years and remember them fondly, having absolutely no responsibilities, no cares in the world, and being able to just live without all of the problems that the world would later bring to most of us as adults. It was not this way for Christina PAOLILLA. Seemingly, she was an ordinary teenager, and she moved to Clear Lake with her family in the late 1990s. She was described as quiet and introverted. She actually struggled to fit in amongst her peers for most of her life. She struggled with alopecia. She was described to be somewhat of a loner, and it was painfully obvious that her appearance was in large part due to the insecurities that she felt amongst her peers and her inability to fit in. Before we get into Christine's background, I do want to talk about the victims of this crime before we get into what it is that happened to these people. Tiffany Nicole Rowell was born on April 24th, 1985. She was described by some of the people who knew her best to have a radiant smile, very loving and generous personality, and just a very kind person who would have done anything for the friends that she had and was a bright light to all that knew her. Tiffany was best friends with Rachel Coloradis, who was born on November 20th, 1984. They had both recently graduated from Clear Lake High School and had plans to attend college. According to her family, she loved her country and considered joining the U.S. Air Force. She was a diligent worker and received exemplary reviews by each of her employers. She was also a talented artist, and she loved to cook and was also known for having a beautiful, bright smile and a quick wit, somebody who was fun to be around and would always put a smile on whoever's face that she would spend time with. Marcus Priscilla was born on August 29th, 1983. His family described him as very loving and giving, as well as compassionate, generous, and a gentle young man, and he took much joy in his car restoration hobby. His proudest accomplishments are graduating from high school, pursuing his career goals at San Jacinto College, and being the best son a mother could ever have. Adelbert Nicholas Sanchez was born May 12th, 1982, and was 21 years old at the time of his murder. He was known to be a very open and giving person, and his family described him as being someone who would always look at what was on the inside of somebody as opposed to judging them for what's on the outside at first glance. All 4 of these individuals would go on to be brutally murdered by someone that they knew, someone that they were extremely familiar with, someone who they felt that they could have trusted. And on the evening of July 18th, 2003, they were proven wrong about that at the hands of somebody that they had all been fooled by. Christine Marie PAOLILLA was born March 31st, 1986. She was born in Long Island, New York, to a stay-at-home mother, and her father was a construction worker. She also has an older brother named John. When she was just 2 years old, her father was killed in a construction accident. And following the death of her husband, Lori Paolilla, began abusing drugs and eventually lost custody of her children, which would go on to affect Paolilla to a great extent. And it would be something that she always would struggle with and would increase her issues with trust, as well as her issues with her own insecurities and feeling of abandonment and not being enough in regards to her need to be loved and to be protected by those around her. When she was just a little girl, she was diagnosed with alopecia, and this caused a loss of hair not only on her head, but her eyelashes, her eyebrows were all patchy and would result in massive amounts of bullying directed towards Christine and an insecurity of this illness that she had to suffer and endure through. She also had poor vision and wore very thick glasses, which would also be another factor in her tormented struggle with being bullied from a very young age, and would cause internalized feelings of insecurity as well as resentment towards her peers who she felt didn't accept her. Eventually, she was reunited with her mother, who had worked on herself and overcome her drug addiction and remarried. And financially speaking, Christine was set up. When her father passed away, she was left with a massive trust fund that was put in place where she would receive this inheritance from her father at the age of 18. Money was never really the issue for this family, though. It was more personal trials and tribulations that really took its toll on the Paolilla family. So after remarrying, her mother, Christine, her brother, and her mother's new husband moved to Clear Lake, Texas. Christine would enroll at Clear Lake High School, where her luck would seemingly begin to change, and she would meet two popular girls who were actually very nice to her and would actually go on to befriend her, who then would help her improve her appearance and fit in with the other students. Rachel and Tiffany would teach Christine how to do her makeup, how to apply and wear wigs, so that way she would have a full head of hair and would not be insecure about her alopecia. And they were just overall extremely kind to her. They took her in as a friend, genuinely, and transformed her whole entire school experience from what it was to being a bullied young girl to being one of the most popular girls in high school, with these other two girls that were not only popular and well-liked, but were kind and genuine. In 2003, Christine was voted Miss Irresistible by her school's student body. And it was also in this same year that she would go on to form another relationship that would not have the same positive effect as Rachel and Tiffany would have on her life. This was when she met Christopher Lee Snyder, who was a 21-year-old while she was still a senior in high school. Christine's parents both disapproved of Snyder, and Rachel and Tiffany also did not approve and were not very fond of Chris as a person or a potential match for Christine. After becoming involved with Chris, the relationship would quickly become tumultuous, leading to both spiraling further into drug addiction and toxicity in their relationship that was evident to everyone around them. This would also become evident to Rachel and Tiffany, something that would further drive a wedge amongst the once close group of friends. Tiffany and Rachel were 1 year older than Christine and had already graduated and were making plans to attend college. This would only fuel Christine's feelings of insecurity and abandonment because she felt her two friends had cast her to the side, and their disapproval of her relationship would only add fuel to the fire. After graduating from high school, Tiffany Rowell was staying in her family home alone following the death of her mother, and her father, who had worked out of town, had made arrangements for Tiffany to remain living in that home so she could finish school and further her plans. Shortly after graduating, Rachel would also move into the home with Tiffany. Marcus, who was Tiffany's boyfriend, as well as his cousin Adelbert, were also frequent visitors. The group was not without their own problems either. Both girls at the time of their murders were drinking and experimenting with drugs, as well as working in a strip club, and both boys had been in some trouble with the law, and allegations of drug dealing were made against them. However, this was all relatively normal for young people of that age. They were making plans for their future, and a clear divide between what most would consider normal teenage experimentation and the behaviors being displayed by Chris and Christine was evident. Christine was known by Chris's family as the Psycho and would have explosive arguments in their family home that would lead to domestic violence incidents and screaming matches. Yet somehow Christine was never willing to end the relationship, and when she was put out of the house by Chris or his family on multiple different occasions, she would often be known to linger around outside of the home, waiting to be let back in. And there was one time when she even went as far as to sleep out on the lawn after one particularly heinous fight that they had had. This would all come to a head in mid-July when, for whatever reason, Chris and Christine decided to reach out to Tiffany and Rachel in an attempt to hang out and possibly acquire some drugs. It is mostly unknown exactly how and why this would transpire, as the only details that would be given later would come from Christine alone. The initial plan was to rob the teens' home under the guise of wanting to buy drugs, and coming from a friend, the 4 victims would have their guards down, not suspecting that one of the girl's best friends would ever have in mind the nefarious and cruel plans that she did in fact have planned to carry out. According to Christine, after arriving at the home, Chris would get into an altercation with Adelbert, which was the catalyst to what would eventually take place. This fact is inconsistent with what was later shown to be true. 2 weapons were used in the facilitation of the crime, and Christine would later admit that before entering the home, Chris would put a gun into her hands. She explained that this was done to further their plans to rob the group, since there were 4 of them and Chris wanted to have the upper hand on the group. Shortly after entering the home, they would exit sometime later, leaving 4 young people dead inside the home. All of the victims had been shot multiple times, and blunt force trauma had been used on some of them. However, it was Rachel and Tiffany who got the brunt of the aggression that would come out of this horrifying attack. Police would go on to say a total of 40 rounds had been shot, which would indicate each gun was probably reloaded multiple times. Each of the girls had been shot in their groin area, something that investigators later noted indicated a personal grudge being likely due to the nature of this. It would be alleged that Christine had become enraged with feelings of jealousy and rejection, and this may have been the explanation for the overkill used on the group, as well as the personal nature of shooting someone in their private areas. It was also later determined that all of the victims died almost immediately.
So, the gun was in your hand, and what was he telling you? 1, 2, 3?
He was holding on to it, too.
Okay, like on top of your hand or something?
Yes, like,
okay, like
I couldn't even tell you how it was, like, but that one, like, I was scared and I was, like, crimping, and then I had made the gun go off, not purposely, though, but, like, it went to, like, the back of the room, because I was just, like, screaming, just, like, shaking.
So, somehow you pulled the trigger?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's like, 1, 2, 3, and he's like, come on, you bitch, you bitch, you bitch, and he started just screaming at me, and then, he kept, like, it felt like I was, like, being, like, jerked, like, like,
It was violent when it goes off?
Mm-hmm.
How many times do you think it went off in your hand?
A million times.
It went off a bunch in your hand?
It felt like a million times, like, even, like, the first time, it felt like a million times.
So you were pulling the trigger somehow?
No, like, it's like he has his hand, and my hand was, like, I couldn't even tell you how, like, it was,
okay.
But it was his force that was making
it go off?
Yes.
Okay. Were you hitting anyone?
I don't know.
Come on, it's important. This is important. Okay, you're doing a good job. If you're like this and you're doing it, you know that you're hitting the person in front of you.
Well, we weren't really, like, in front of anybody.
Were you near anyone?
It was almost back, like, in the middle of them in the door.
Okay, well, somebody was found in that area. You sure there's no one by you?
I couldn't even.
Okay.
So, like, I'm throw up.
Okay.
I couldn't even tell you. I was so scared. It was.
Then what happened?
It's like, it just felt like it was like a blackout almost. Like, sure. Everything, like, just.
Okay.
Like, hypnotized, kind of like, but all I can remember, I was just like, I was screaming and, like, and just, like, I kept trying to, like, like, pull away, but I couldn't, because I felt like just, like, spaghetti almost.
Right. Okay.
I heard, like, shots, but it wasn't from my gun. It was, or the one that he gave me, because, like, I was, like, holding on to it, and then I'm trying to remember like how this happened, because I remember it was just like, it was so quick. Like I heard like other like shots like going off.
From his gun, I guess?
I don't know what kind of.
I mean, there wasn't a
shot.
third person shooting.
No.
Okay.
It's just everything was like, everything got like, you know, like quiet, like, but you know how like in the movie Saving Private Ryan, you can hear like shooting, but like you can't hear like anything else.
Right.
You know, like you can hear people or whatever, and then I still keep hearing his voice and seeing his face in my head every time I speak to you.
And I do just want to warn you guys, I'm going to overlay some pictures from the crime scene, which does in fact show blurred out images of these bodies exactly the way that they were found. It's not overly gory, but it is very disturbing to see. So if you don't want to see that, you might want to fast forward a couple minutes ahead. Tiffany and Marcus were found still sitting on the couch when they were brutally attacked, indicating to the police that they had not seen it coming whatsoever. They had been in a relaxed environment, in a very relaxed position, and their bodies would remain that way. Adelbert was found laying behind the couch, and it was noted that he also died immediately from the attack. Rachel's body was found in such a way that it was obvious that she had survived the initial attack and was tragically moments from being able to call for help when Christine, after having left the scene, decided to go back inside the house and check to make sure no witnesses had been left alive. Rachel's body was found near the entryway to the home with her arm outstretched in the process of dialing 911 when Christine, upon re-entering, found her to still be alive and with the butt of her gun proceeded to beat Rachel to death over her head until she succumbed to her injuries. A truly horrific ending to a tarnished friendship, and Christine had taken the lives of the two people who had shown her nothing but kindness and friendship. The couple would casually make their way out of the house and back down the street, at which time they were seen by witnesses and neighbors of Rachel and Tiffany, who would later go on to provide details to a sketch artist. After committing such vile and evil acts, Chris would drop Christine off at a Walgreens in time for her shift at the beauty counter and would completely move on as if nothing had happened. The crime scene would be discovered shortly thereafter by friends of Tiffany and Rachel who were trying to no avail to reach the two friends. When the police arrived on scene, they discovered one of the most gruesome murder scenes the small suburban town of Clear Lake had ever seen. They would soon realize they also had no plausible leads, as it was unheard of for 4 young people to be attacked in the way that these 4 were. They speculated that it was possible gang retaliation or a drug deal gone wrong. Very little evidence was found on scene due to the nature of the home being considered somewhat of a party house. They would never suspect the responsible party to be their 17-year-old best friend as the perpetrator behind this cold-blooded murder. They got a witness statement from the neighbors and tapped a sketch artist to recreate a possible suspect rendering of the 2 people seen around the home that were yet unidentified. Christine and Chris would continue to go on with their lives as if nothing had happened, and in 2004, their relationship would finally come to an end. Chris was arrested for a car theft in Kentucky, and Christine would enter rehab in Kerrville, Texas at the age of 18. Around this time, her life would change again in a pivotal way as she met a man in rehab who she would go on to marry in 2005. And she also came into the inheritance left to her from the death of her father. Christine inherited around $350,000, a sum of money which, given to any 18-year-old, would be a cause for disaster. But for Christine, it would put her on the fast track to utter destruction and squalor. The man she met in rehab was Stanley Justin Rott, a heroin addict who would feed into Christine's toxic self-destruction. She initially bought a condo with the money she received. In the summer of 2005, around the 2-year anniversary of the murders, the local news was reinvigorating the story to try to gain some traction as the murders had turned cold. While high on drugs and watching TV with her new husband in her new condo, Christine would happen upon one of these news segments, and immediately she had a paranoid, drug-induced panic attack after seeing the sketch of herself and Chris on the news and was convinced it was obviously a sketch that looked like her, something that I would tend to disagree with. She would end up confessing everything to her husband, or at least her version of the events of that day, and convinced him that she was coerced into participating.
Sometimes when we discuss things about ourselves, okay, we tell the truth about events that take place, okay, but when the attention's focused on us, it's called damage control, okay, and it's just a natural instinct, okay. In order for mercy to work, mercy being giving you what you need, and justice giving you what you deserve, okay, in order for that road for mercy, I need complete honesty, and sometimes that's some of the bad with the good, okay. Why would your husband tell us, okay, as well as others? Okay? Not Chris. Alright? Why would your husband tell us that one of them was crawling on the ground and that you admitted to striking Rachel?
I never said that. I've talked to my husband about that situation every time, you know, like I'd see something on the news, I'd say, you know, because it would remind me of, you know, what had happened to them. And I mean, I you know, all I ever told my husband was that I would tell them what the news had said. That they did say that she was on the ground.
When you went in there, okay? When you went in the house, your husband is telling us that you pulled Rachel out, okay, initially, okay?
I did not go in the house.
That Chris did the shooting.
I swear to God.
There's two weapons. There's two weapons we have to account for, Christine.
I know, I know he has a gun, but I swear to God, I was not.
What were you wearing that day?
I was not in the house.
What were you wearing that day?
Clothes for work.
Clothes for work. And you're at Walgreens and you check in at 4:23 p.m. You take a lunch break at 6:59 and come back in at 7:25 p.m. Okay? While you're waiting for somebody at the countertop, you look down and you see blood on your fingernails. And you freak out.
No.
These are some details that you have shared with other people.
No, that's not true at all. That is not true at all.
How are other people knowing specific details?
I don't know what other people are saying, but that is not true at all. I never had anything on my fingernail.
Now, you do understand that Chris is saying this was all your idea and that you had a lot of bent-up frustration towards Rachel, that you thought that he was having an affair with her, and that's why you acted out against her.
I would have never even thought of making up something like that.
And then when he came out, that it was your idea to go back in and that you told him, we got to make sure that they're all dead. We got to go back in and make sure they're all dead.
I never said any of those things. I promise you, I never said nothing like that. I've been honest with you about everything that happened.
Okay.
I swear to God.
If that's the case, you have to be more specific on the details that Chris told you what took place. And try to remember what happened to the guns afterwards, where you took them.
I don't know what happened.
Where did he go afterwards? You didn't go straight to work.
We went to work and I told him to just take a taxi cab home. I didn't want to see him.
Did he call a taxi cab?
I didn't call it for him.
Where did you last see him?
At the Walgreens.
And what kind
and he told me, you're not going to work. You're not going to work. You know, you're in on this with me now. And I said, what? And I said, what are you talking about? I had nothing to do with this. He said, well, you're in the car. You drove me there. And I said, no. You told me you needed to get the crap that you needed.
Okay. Well, he's right about one thing. Okay. And even you said this. Okay. Which compared to murder it doesn't match up. Okay. But you did say that he came back and he told you that he jacked him, and that he started searching his pockets, and that he had to go back, and you brought him back, knowing that he had just jacked him.
I didn't bring him back to the house.
Christine, in order for mercy to work, we need to have complete honesty.
I wanted to go to their house. I didn't want to bring him there.
What did he say he did with the guns? You would have had that conversation with him. What did he say he did with them? Christine,
I don't know. He did not. I swear.
Whose guns are they?
I guess they're his dad's.
Okay. Where did he? What kind of guns are they?
I don't. I probably knew, like, if he told me, but I can tell you, I wouldn't know one gun from another gun.
Why didn't you go to the funerals?
I was so scared. I felt so bad.
Who else did you tell?
I don't like going to funerals anyway. I can't go to funerals because of my father.
Okay. I know your dad died when you were, what, 5 maybe?
I was 2.
2, okay. And in fact, one of the times that the police has called you to your house, it's like 15 years to the day of his death, okay? I understand some situation with your mom and some of her histories and the obstacles she's had to overcome, okay? And I'm not a preacher man, okay? But have you ever heard the term prodigal son? The story of the prodigal son? The prodigal son there was this king, all right? Actually, he had a bunch of land, all right? And he had 2 sons. One son was the good son, who would always do what his dad told him to do, work in the fields and all that. The other son was like a partier, like to have a good time. Well, the partying son said, you know what, Dad? I want all my inheritance now. Can I get that? And the dad, because he loves him, gave him all his inheritance, and he ran off, and he spent it on women and booze, and he went all through his money, okay? He goes all through his money. And he's eating pig slop, living like a pig, and he says, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'd rather be a slave or a servant, because my dad treated his servants very well, than live the way I'm living now. So he goes back to his dad, and he tells his dad, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I did this, and I was wrong, and he was honest. And his dad was able to embrace him with open arms and didn't make him be a servant, okay? And that's the story of the prodigal son, okay? And in many cases, you're the prodigal Christine, all right? The question is, now that you're on this road to redemption, are you coming back and being completely honest and telling us what took place? Or are you just telling us a little bit?
I'm sorry.
Because then nobody can open up their arms to you, Christine. Because I cannot believe as detailed as your husband is, all right? Details. According to him, you told him that you beat Rachel. You were scared, it's haunted you, but you beat Rachel.
I never said
that you had a 38 and that he had a 9mm. How would he know the caliber of guns? How would he know the caliber of guns?
The two would decide to go into hiding, although no one was actually looking for her yet. Her own feelings of guilt and paranoia mixed with drugs were beginning to eat her alive, and she was cracking under the pressure. The couple would begin living out of hotels around November of 2005, and their spiral into self-destruction would intensify to new heights. For the next 8 months, the pair lived out of a hotel in San Antonio, shooting up drugs and rarely leaving the hotel out of paranoid delusions and fear. Christine, in particular, would remain holed up in the hotel room and would send Stanley out to buy their drugs, junk food, and whatever else they might want. Finally, in July of 2006, 3 years after the murders had taken place, a tip was received via Crime Stoppers from a male caller who said he was in rehab with Christine and told the police that she had told him about her participation in the murders of her 2 best friends and the 2 young men who were there with them that day. Many people would later speculate that it was her husband. However, it was later reported that this was not the person who had called in the tip. On July 19th of 2006, police were able to track the couple down at their motel in San Antonio and arrested the pair. What they found in that room that the couple was living in was sheer horror and unfathomable conditions which would horrify and disgust myself personally. The room was littered with hundreds of used hypodermic needles used to shoot up drugs. Trash and cigarette ash was littered everywhere. Dog feces and urine was found all over the room, and specks of blood and other bodily fluids were sprayed all over the walls and different surfaces throughout the room due to the process of shaking the used needles after piercing their skin, and blood would splatter and would just be left there for days and never be actually cleaned up.
Officers described it as the most disgusting place they've ever seen. Unbelievable. You wouldn't believe it if you saw it.
Investigators found hundreds of syringes and dozens of boxes of drug paraphernalia scattered all over the room.
It was horrible. There was a mist of blood that was on most items in the room. After they finished injecting, they would expel the remaining bits of fluid in the syringe into the air, and it would turn into a mist that was had a bit of blood in it. It was just horrible.
They were probably a couple of weeks away from death. She was surviving on Ritz crackers and cheese and a whole bunch of heroin.
Initially, Christine would deny the charges against her, and only after being confronted with the evidence against her and her own statements made to others did she come clean and proceed to blame everything on Chris, stating that he had forced her to help him and claiming that she was scared to ever say anything and that he had threatened her and her family. Both Christine and Chris were both charged, although the latter had not been arrested and would soon after go on the run from the police. While still collecting statements from Christine, the police attempted to track down Chris to formally charge him as well with the murders. A family member of his who had learned of Christine's arrest would end up tipping Chris off, who was at the time living in South Carolina, and the police would soon attempt to track him down there. Their efforts would eventually be for naught, as after receiving the tip from his family members, Chris would take his own life and would be found in a state of decomposition in August of 2006 after taking a handful of pills and wandering into the woods near where he was living. Christine would go on to face a trial over her role in the murders of her two closest and dearest friends, as well as the two boys, and would appear emotional and regretful throughout the trial. However, I personally believe she only felt sorry for herself. On October 13th of 2008, Christine PAOLILLA was convicted of 4 counts of capital murder, and because she was a juvenile offender at the time of the killings, she was spared the death penalty. The following day, she was sentenced to life in prison, and she will be eligible for parole in 2046. So that is the story of Christine PAOLILLA and the Clear Lake Massacre, and what a horrific story it is. It's truly mind-blowing to know that a 17-year-old girl would be capable of such things, especially after being shown every kindness in the world from these two girls. And I'm sure things probably had soured between them, and there might have been some high school drama that had gone back and forth, but to think that that would all come to a head in the form of a quadruple homicide, and then this girl would just go on to continue 3 years of her life living. I mean, obviously she was living no life that was actually worth anything or actually sustainable in any way, but it's still, and then only show remorse and only show any sort of emotion when she was having to go through this trial. Again, I believe that Christine PAOLILLA only felt sorry for herself, only regretted doing it for herself, and had, no regrets in regards to her 4 victims, who were Rachel, Tiffany, Marcus, and Adelbert. So, what do you guys think? Had y'all heard of the story before, and what are your thoughts on everything that we discussed as far as this crime and this video goes? I would love to know in the comments, guys, so please leave it down there and like the video if you like it, and subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see more like this. And until next time, y'all take it easy. I will see y'all later. Bye. She had her mother killed in her sleep. When and where do we draw the line in society? What about Laken Riley's humanity? I mean, he's ridiculous. He should resign, or if he won't resign, be forcefully removed from that office. And instead, what does she do? She goes and throws him away like trash, dumping him over a fence into sticker bushes on the side of a highway. How disgusting do you have to be?
I'm going to tell you in detail why you have been kidnapped, what's going to happen to you, and how long you'll be here.
The fact that she would have some sort of justification, some sort of reasoning, as if money would ever be a reason to do this to your family, is just bone-chilling. Why would you cover for this man and allow him to leave the scene of the crime and act like he was never there?